I'm finishing up a couple of notes from this episode of Voice of Bold Business. And I have to tell you, first, I'm Jessica Dewell, your host and owner of Red Direction. Secondly, you're listening to program 52 of the Voice of Bold Business Radio called Winfinity, More Than an Ideal. Well, what is Winfinity? This wonderful gentleman, Mr. O'Neill, introduced this to me during some of our conversations when he and I first met, and I have grasped onto it, and I have worked to include Winfinity in so many areas of my life. No, in fact, every area of my life. Why it became a topic here is because in the shows we've had so far, there are these concepts of collaboration, and there's a big spectrum of what collaboration is. And so I invited three people, Jeff Sherman, Lori Anding, and Iva Ignjatovic, and asked them this question: how do we create an idea or a proposal that is a win-win-win? And the things that I took away that are the most important that I want you to listen for as well are we need to notice what's going on around us, notice what's going on within us, being able to recognize where we are, how we are showing up, if we're showing up, and then how the other person is, and if they're showing up, allows us to have an interaction, whether it's a phone call or a meeting or something like this of visiting Voice of Bold Business. What is our intention and how do we know what is happening? You'll hear Jeff talk about what brave leadership is, and you'll hear Iva talk about transparency and shared meaning, and you'll hear Lori share a story illustrating what a win-win-win looks like. And the thing is, a win-win-win isn't that we all get to the same goal. A win-win-win is when everybody understands what they want and they bring it to each meeting, interaction, conversation, and that our outcomes could be different. And it's when we recognize there's something we can do together and there's something that we can benefit from for others by doing this thing together, that we can really see, okay, cool, here's my goal, here's your goal, here's how the outcomes will benefit people outside of this interaction, and we get the win-win-win piece. I'm going to turn the conversation over to our panel. You will hear me ask Jeff, Lori, and Iva the question, you'll hear their answers, and then we're going to dig into what does clarity mean and how do we know we have it, to transparency and what it means and the fact that that's a very charged word, to conflict and how to recognize conflict, and why it is bold in business today.
Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business, the show that provides everything smart leaders need to evaluate situations, build relationships, and create solutions. Jessica Dewell candidly talks about the skills necessary to build tenacity and do more with less. And now, here's Jessica.
Okay, so we're going to just jump right in. Jeff, how do we create an idea or proposal that is a win-win-win?
Win-win-wins are created first by listening. Think about that. When I'm listening, I'm not thinking of what I'm going to say or do. I'm thinking of gathering information and clues. Then I can process that. It's something like I'm gaining perspective. And that precludes all speakers. The best speakers in the world are probably some of the best listeners. Mm-hmm. When we listen, we learn what cues are helping us listen. And therefore, when we speak to those cues. That's the same whether you and I are working through video conferencing or whether you're face-to-face or on the phone. The listening part of it is often overlooked, and I think that's very important. Another thing that creates the win-win-win is to allow for original thought. We're programmed, we read a lot, we're on social media, and we hear tag phrases and things, and we tend to take people's perspective and then try to isolate those into boxes that will help our understanding. But original thought is allowing yourself to respect the individual, allow them to share their ideas, and then not box it yet. Just let it be. And that takes slowing down. It takes calming ourselves and getting real for a minute. I think one of the things that's important to do at that point is to sketch down your ideas, things that you want to talk about, things you want to pursue quicker, things you want to slow down on. And so as you write these down, you're allowing yourself to be open to inspiration. You know, my philosophy is that inspiration is all around us, and we just have to tune into it. Then, man, nothing's impossible at that point. I have a tag phrase I use at Sherman Speaks that says, beyond mediocrity, dreams are found. So the typical striving for a win is sometimes we want it to be our win, but we have an accountability. Here's the difference between brave leadership and leadership. Brave leadership says, I'm accountable not only to present, but I'm accountable to be presented to. Not only do I need character, but I expect character in return. Should I provide opportunities for others? Yes, absolutely. Because that's just as accountable as me providing opportunities for myself. Think about that. When we go to an inspiration point and we're looking out and we see this great view that we just all love, we all have different ones. It's giving to us everything it has. And that makes us just full and inspired. We can do that for other people. We can fill them up and give them everything we have, and that makes a win-win-win. In core theory, character, opportunity, relationships, and education, that's the acronym for core theory. I am responsible in each of those characteristics, we call them the quadrants of accountability, to be accountable. And that word makes people sometimes stifle and, oh, I gotta be accountable, but it's actually the opposite. Accountability gives us our power and our ability. If we're gonna create across the board win, then we have to identify what our stretch is gonna be. Because if we're not stretching, how are we creating a better life for ourselves? And then if we're not stretching, what example are we giving to this proposal that we need them to stretch as well? I think we have to identify that.
Eva, how do we create an idea or proposal that is a win-win-win?
It all comes down to trust, but the trust itself will not come on its own. And we need to be sure that we speak the same language. And when I say same language, I don't mean literally like, okay, we speak French this time or English or German or whatever. Something means for me has the same exact meaning for the other side or other sides. The whole listening will not help me unless I'm able to translate that listening into a real messages and real meaning. And meaning usually means giving a context to what we receive as a message. So trust and listening and getting on the same board. And it all comes down to that we need to develop that trust to show that we are all not just on the same page, but that we are moving in the same direction toward the same goal. My success is your success, and your success is mine. So that's the core of every win-win-win. And transparency, because if we get into any relationship with some kind of agenda, with something that we do not share, something that we are not disclosing, then we will not have trust and we will never achieve that win-win-win concept. And eventually we will not get to the goal, whatever that goal might be in that specific situation or idea or business proposal.
Lori, how do we create an idea or proposal that is a win-win-win?
I was thinking about this for about a month because you told me about this topic a while ago. As a consultant, I was thinking, how do I do this? So I'm just going to illustrate because I have a client who had a conference in LA. I thought, gosh, I really want to go to that conference because I get to meet people in real life who I've met on social media. How fun is that? So how can this be a win-win-win for my client, for myself, and then for the people we meet? It was perfection because my client has to man a booth doesn't get to move around a lot. I was there in support of him, moved around everywhere, found all the people who I wanted to find, who I'd been chatting with on Twitter. They came to the booth and we talked about the product that he's selling. And it was actually a blogger conference. Through this triangle, we were able to give these bloggers something to write about. So their community gets a new brand, gets a new feel, a new look from what they're writing about. My client gets brand awareness, exactly what he wanted, and visibility. And then I'm there as just the facilitator. That's my favorite position, is shining light on other people. It's what I like to do. In taking all the aspects from what everybody said, I would say communication is also a very big part of making that proposal work. As a servant leader, this is what I think you need. And then what I would like to get out of it is XYZ, and what you want to get out of XYZ, and we can come together. And I loved what Iva said, my success is your success, because those are the types of people I work with, who really want to be successful, but they want other people in their community to be successful as well. And that is where collaboration just is on fire, if you ask me. It's to work together with a common goal for everybody to be successful. And I think that communication is a big part of that.
The first thing I hear you guys talking about is being receptive. And it's really hard to be receptive if we don't know what we want. It's really hard to listen and to figure out what somebody else is coming to a conversation or a situation with if we don't know what we want. So I'm curious, what would you add to the conversation about that? Tell us more about how you find clarity in what you want when you're showing up to an encounter, a conversation, a meeting.
Sitting down at a meeting and everybody's talking about the proposal or the idea. If you're listening to what people are saying, you understand what they need. That listening is how you figure out the commonality of it all.
Does listening and maybe the first meeting, is it more of a brainstorming to gather information, or to fully show up? Do I know what I want when I get there to that meeting? Does that make sense?
Let's use this segment as an example. Up front, we knew some guidelines and we're able to give that thought. And then we hear one another's perspectives and it gets more intriguing for all of us. And so one of the things to bring to a meeting is, what is it I'm not thinking? What perspectives can I gain? Those are two great questions because they allow us to be vulnerable. What is it I'm not seeing? What is it I'm not getting? These are thought-provoking questions. And how do I gain a different perspective? That way we're most likely not going to clash, and we're certainly not going to blame if we're looking for that perspective.
Okay, so and I'm going to go back to what Lori was saying too, because when your client said, hey, come to this conference with me, was that the point that collaboration started and the conversation was to start? Was that you both knew you were going to go there? Now let's figure out how we were going to work together. Or did one of you initiate it and start that conversation? And was there clarity around that initial point of conversation?
Following my intuition, it felt perfection to me. So I was going to do everything in my power to get my feet there for him. My gosh, I can actually talk to people directly who I've been tweeting with. Is that going to establish a better relationship with his clients? Yes. Perfect.
Ta-da! So it was there and it just needed to be worded differently. Thank you. Eva, is there anything that you would like to add?
I like to get in touch with people, if possible, in any way, unofficially, before we venture into a new project, and just talk to them. Not even particularly on the topic, but to hear what they have to say unofficially, to hear their maybe thoughts or fears or, maybe even resentments towards something. In that way, I'm better prepared for potential landmines, especially in companies with more employees, larger companies, or larger meetings, because sometimes I need to play a role, as Lori said, of a facilitator, because I recognize the same thread, the same motive, the same line in their plans, but they don't see that. So I need to connect them. And if I can figure out where can I make those connections before we have an actual meeting, that's like a super start.
And I'm going to build on this because there was a word, Iva, that you used in your answer. Do you know the word that you said that is supercharged?
No.
Resentment.
That I'm thinking of here is transparency.
Oh, transparency.
Okay. So when you said transparency, not only did I write it down in whatever color I was writing with, I circled it in my super color of pink that says, come back to this, come back to this. Because it's a very charged word, this concept of transparent. When we're going in with clarity, we know why we're going to a meeting. We have some concept of what we want out of it. We also recognize that when we walk into that meeting, it could be totally different than anything we could have pre-planned for. So with those three things in mind, I might only be prepared to give you certain information. I might give you all the information that I think you need. This is my problem with transparency. How do I know what you actually need to make this relationship work? How do I know that?
Well, I usually torture people.
Oh, you torture people. I'm going to call you next time.
You know, that's the thing. Jeff mentioned you need to give and give so that people can give back to you. That concept goes wider. I need to be prepared to go there and even sometimes play dumb and say, I don't get it. Explain it to me like I'm a 3-year-old. What is it that you want? I need to be able to digest the whole information. I let people talk. And that goes back to the concept of listening, because I can't tell if they have told me everything unless I listen. And then I can see the gaps. Every time I'm open with all these people, I'm open because that's the only way they can open up to me. Even if that concept is something unfamiliar to them, which is often a case because they come from different corporate cultures or different social backgrounds or whatever. There are different reasons that transparency is a foreign concept. But if they can recognize in me honest intention, then we can build upon that. And sometimes I'm even blunt, like to the point of being annoying. Even then they recognize that I'm doing that for their good.
You are listening to the Voice of Bold Business Radio, and I'm your host, Jessica Dewell of Red Direction. You are listening to Winfinity, more than an ideal. When I walk into a meeting, I know a lot about a company. And when I go into the first meeting and the second meeting and the emails, I'm looking for clues of culture. And I can tell by the types of information I get how readily these people are willing to share, or where they think this particular problem solution that we're working toward fits in their overall business. And it's interesting that we get in our own way here, which is why I'm talking a little bit about transparency and how it can be charged, because people may decide, the part of my business over here has nothing to do with what you're helping me with here, so I'm not going to tell you anything about it, and if you ask me, I'm going to just shut it down. Silo! Now, before I get on the soapbox, I'm going to take everything that you said, Iva, add what I just said, and I want to hear from Lori and Jeff, what would you add to this concept of transparency when we know nobody is ever 100% transparent for a variety of reasons?
The more transparent an individual is, the more focus they have on their intent. If I'm clear on what I want from the meeting, they're going to notice that in me. If I'm cloudy, if I'm uncertain, if I'm there to get through it so I can go to lunch, they are going to pick up on that. I go to a meeting to make a difference. I'm prepared. I know a lot about the company. Brilliant. Because the precursor to all of this conversation is I have to know what I'm doing. You can see when someone walks in the room, they own that room because they know what they're there for. And I want to listen to them. They're going to open up and they're going to say, this is the real deal. This is a genuine article. So that transparency, and you couple that with vulnerability, and that vulnerability allows for them to add without feeling like they're stepping on toes.
Lori, what would you add?
Transparency is how you become successful. As far as I'm concerned, I've always been transparent, so it's my innate, that's who I am. Why do I like being transparent? Well, because it incites trust. The more transparent I am, the more vulnerable I am, the more people trust me, and the more that I can do that, the easier it is for them to be vulnerable. The minute you share something vulnerable, someone says, oh, yeah, I had something similar. It's almost contagious. So I think that transparency, vulnerability, and trust all are part of the bigger picture that helps drive better ideas, collaboration.
Okay, you know what that reminded me of? That reminded me of the baker, the butcher, and the candlestick maker all in their boat.
Yeah.
Because you're right, they go together. When we're talking about skills that we have as people, we need all three of those in our bailiwick. And I guess what? The butcher, being able to put food on our table and live the life that we want. The candlestick maker, what purpose are we having in this world? And the baker, being able to figure out how to put things together. Holy cow, this is like just coming out of me right now. Scott,
I love it.
I'm going to have a blog post about this, I'm sure, but also this concept of, Scott, this might be a good little snippet thing, because there are a whole bunch of skills that I hear you guys talking about that we put together in a person, and it elevates our ability to interact with others, our ability to show up, our ability to be present. And what that means to me is even more emotional intelligence.
Emotional intelligence is a killer topic. It comes down to recognizing that I am a piece of a puzzle, and I am made to interlock and find other ways to connect to create a broader picture. Mm-hmm. When I try to be everything as my puzzle piece, there's a few edgy things that are missing. In addition to that, when we speak of clarity, vulnerability, we're not speaking of drama. We're not bringing all of our woes to the meeting. That's not vulnerability. Vulnerability is we're bringing our best self, but we're open to who we truly are. Doesn't society somewhat teach us that we need to impress? I had this thought the other day, and I took a little picture of a mountain, and I thought, can't you create more good by inspiring than you can by impressing someone?
Do the work, lead by example. You become the inspiration. Very, very thoughtful. I'm going to switch gears because we're talking about all of these things, and they all help create this environment for a situation to be successful where we can think about ourselves, we can think about the other person, and we can also think about the people that are affected by whatever the first two are working on. There's always going to be differing opinions. There's always going to be strong personalities and agreement or disagreement. I would like to hear from each of you. What are your tips for identifying conflict and your best tip for taking care of it as soon as it's found?
I have found when I say, Jessica, if I'm understanding correctly, you are stating this, this, and this. The conflict may only be in me because they may come back and say, oh, I'm sorry, you're inferring differently than I intended. Let me go over that again. And then in the whole room, there's no conflict. Remember, a lot of our conflict starts inside with our lack of perspective.
And our own experience that we react to. I would say, yeah, because that's part of
pulling up our whole schemata of past experiences.
Sometimes people think that conflict is just around the corner, and actually it's not really a conflict. It's just a misunderstanding or different words or simply different opinions. Before we make a fuss, we need to know how to recognize if that's really a potential conflict. What I like to do is recognizing how people behave in teams. I like to observe team dynamics. When I say team dynamics, that means people working in a company or people working on a project, to see how they respond to each other, how they communicate, how they interact, verbally, non-verbally. There were situations in my experience where conflicts were not possible to be solved because things that people wanted were completely different on the different sides, starting with, we simply think that this is wrong approach, we want this, and the other side that says, no, we think that this is the right approach, so we're going this way. Why am I bringing this up? Because people are not rational. People are not logical. People are emotional. Mm-hmm. If we want to resolve real conflicts.
And if you're listening to Iva and your response is everybody else's but me, Holy macaroni, you need to call one of us right away. I'm serious, because there are people out there that go, it's everybody else and not me. Well, hold up the mirror, and all of us here, Jeff and Eva and Lori and myself, we will help you hold that mirror up.
Exactly, because people are not rational, people are emotional, and to resolve issues, we need to be really sure about what's happening behind all that no's that we are hearing, or different perspectives, to try to resolve. But as I said, in my experience, twice in my career, I couldn't resolve an issue because it was deeper than simple emotional reason. It was, I don't want to work with you, and that's it. They were driving us for a year with a very, very bad, poor relationships because they didn't want to cut the contract. They would pay penalties.
Okay.
We were kneeling, we were giving everything that we could to them.
Hey, this is a perfect example to our transparency conversation earlier.
Yes, ding, 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 ding.
They didn't want to be transparent.
Right.
They were in disguise with a reason.
Right. So you can't force people to be transparent.
No, you can't. A lack of transparency creates a breeding ground for conflict. So the more you can give and the more you can be open to giving when asked, the more likely conflict can be avoided, which means everybody can find their reason and be 100% satisfied with the project, with the idea, with the work, and with the output.
It's like you said, Jessica, put that mirror up. You're triggered because there's something going on inside of you. It doesn't have anything to do with the trigger or what anybody is saying. Mm-hmm. You need to take a look at that. And sometimes you need to agree to disagree, which I find I do quite often, but I find it so funny when I say, okay, I just agree to disagree. There's more conflict there because the person who I'm disagreeing with is, no, I need you to agree with me. I'm like, I don't. So
right.
There's a lot of self-awareness in this whole discussion as well.
If the desire to be right is larger than the desire to create the positive outcome, then no matter of deliberation is going to heal that. Early onset, we can see clearly that we have to resolve things. We're not seeking for consensus. Gosh, if I'm in a boardroom and ideas are being presented, the last thing I'm going to seek for is consensus. If they're just repetitive of me, why are they in the room? So conflict, if it has purpose and it is guided through the conversation correctly, is excellent, right? We don't fear conflict or differing opinions. But what we do fear is this soul desire to be right, either in ourselves or in someone presenting, because being right may not be correct. It may be that we have to find a new solution. We can bring stuff to the table and we create a safe environment where people are respected for their differences. Now we're going to get something done.
This is perfect. We're going to lead into the last question, the last segment of the show, which is, why is creating something with a win-win-win is a bold thing to do as a leader today?
Well, it's quicker and faster to just say, do it. We're all about creating cause nowadays, are we not? Like getting the people to move from the inside out. Intrinsic motivation. And when we have a win-win-win, we are actually pulling the answers out of them and not providing the answers to them. This creates that feeling of team and that feeling of I am empowered and I mutually respect that you are as well. Let's bring our ideas to the table.
Moving from the inside out versus this concept of decision, work, get it done, do you think that they are equally necessary for business leaders, or is one weighted over the other all the time?
I think that we misunderstand what ROI is. We hear about the numbers a lot, but those numbers only come to be because of the true meaning of ROI, which is return on individuals. We view the world on how we view ourselves. If I am confident and I'm assertive and I am honest and full of integrity, then that's what I see in my peers. If I think I'm a great leader, I am going to see what in my peers? their great leadership, their great aspirations, and the things they want to know and do. If I bring that into the company, we can create something where multiple people and leaders are drawing on one another's strengths as they see the strengths within themselves. That is power. If they only see one source as the powerful influencer in the room, then what does that mean they see in themselves?
That makes me think of competition. You're competing to be the top dog in the meeting, competing against everybody. But if you're collaborating with everybody, let's lift everybody up in the room, then everybody is successful. Everybody gets something out of it. Win, win, win. Don't compete. There's something in this meeting for every single person. If you're transparent, you need to tell me what you want. If I don't know what you want, how can I give it to you?
Eva, what would you add?
When you are capable of creating a win-win-win environment or project or collaboration and transparency, that gives a huge authority to you as a person who's enabler of that great work experience and work environment. And it's bold because people actually don't like very much those kind of people. I know it's like on two sides, like they like it, but no, they admire those people. They even envy those people, but they don't always like them because those people have this charisma that is actual, real, not on wishful thinking and on some false merits. They actually perform what they want to see in other people. They perform with themselves and vice versa. They are creating really strong teams. As Jeff said, you make everyone in a team, and Lori, you're not competing with the rest of your team. You're collaborating so you could compete with a different business. So I think that's bold, because to stand firm and be firm in transparency, in collaboration, being vulnerable, being open in communication, lifting other people takes a lot of energy, a lot of stamina, a lot of will. And those people who do that, they actually are very certain of who they are and their own values. And being that is being bold, because as I said, and I'm going back to the beginning, is people don't usually like strong people who are transparent, with integrity and honesty, because you can't buy them
in any way. Okay, we're gonna have to have a whole show about that, because I think all of you guys, and why this is bold, your answers have such similarities, and Eva summed it up very well here. It's easier to not. It's easier to let it go. It's easier to step back. We're not perfect, and we can't do it all the time. Every single time we do stand up, and I'm going to use your word firm. It's a great word here. Every time we are firm in our beliefs that we want what we want, we know what we want, we're working with transparency, we're showing up with intention, we are making sure that we're giving other people the space to figure out inside and add to what's going on. That is what makes this concept of win-win-win bold. I don't even know where to start for this closing, because all I have is more comments and more questions and more thoughts that I wanted to ask Lori and Jeff and Eva. The thing is, we ran out of time. That's okay, because the Voice of Bold Business in its own way tackles all of these things and brings out ideas and opens thoughts and prompts discussion so that we can become the best leader we can be. You can find all the program notes for this episode at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com/P52. That is thevoiceofboldbusiness.com, P/P like program 52. You may also search for Winfinity, more than an ideal. Make sure after you listen to this episode that you subscribe and rate this program, as well as the Voice of Bold Business Radio. We want you to get the future episodes delivered directly to your listening platform of choice. And so how does this apply to you, and what can you do right now? You can share your story and experiences around this concept of win-win-win. What you've tried and if it hadn't worked, and where when it's a win-lose or just a win-win, things fall short. We're interested in knowing. It's because your experiences and what you're doing today and how you approach and what you learn is defining what a leader means. And we want to know, what do you do to work toward Winfinity?
Subscribe at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and get more information, program notes, and past episodes. Bold leaders approach each situation and focus on action to achieve a higher level of leadership. Jessica Dewell, your business advocate, is the host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Thank you for joining us.